In today's lecture, we're going to look at chapters 4 and 5 from Great Expectations, Volume 2. So in this chapter, chapter 4 is ridiculously funny. If you did not laugh when you read this chapter, then I question your sense of humor. Remember how I said that Dickens often uses types and caricatures for his characters? We might not recognize these types in our society. I mean, these were common types in 19th century England, but maybe they're not the same. Some probably are. But we also have types and caricatures that often show up in our contemporary literature, pop culture, and sometimes we refer to these as stock characters, okay? So, you know, your dumb blonde, your dumb jock, those are, you know, just a couple of kind of crazy examples. But I was thinking about what are some ones that, you know, I even, you know, maybe would be gravitate toward. And I thought, I like those sort of socially inept geniuses. So I really like a Big Bang Theory. I like Sheldon Cooper. I like the other ones too, like Leonard and all of them. I also really like this TV show Bones. You probably don't know it because you're young probably and I'm old. But the main character, Brennan, she's also a socially inept genius. So I was thinking about that. It's kind of funny. But, you know, often pop culture exaggerates a specific type of character. And this is both to amuse us and also to expose that type of person's flaws and to make us, you know, question the value system perhaps of that person. Did any of you ever watch the Colbert Report? It's sort of a contemporary example where Stephen Colbert plays a fictional news anchor named Stephen Colbert. And his character is a caricature of political pundits, specifically right-wing political pundits such as Bill O'Reilly from Fox News. So, you know, Dickens does the same kind of thing where his characters are often exaggerated versions of types of people from his society. In this chapter, Mrs. Belinda Pocket is one of these types. She is socially pretentious. She believes, you know, that she is born for, you know, high living. She holds on to this tenuous connection to royalty in her family. She's obsessed with her royal lineage. It's all she can talk about. She reads this certain book that shows all the, or that has all the names of lords, and she knows when her dad's name should be in there. And it's just, she's obsessed with her royal lineage. And yet she's married Mr. Pocket, someone who is beneath someone of that status. But in fact, I mean, kind of her dad's royalty was sort of robbed from him, or you can read about it. Anyway, she has a number of children, I think 6 plus Herbert. It's not really clear. And whenever her children come near her, they seem to trip. They get hurt all the time. All she ever does is, you know, trip them or say, okay, go to bed. It's time for a nap. Go to bed. It's time for a nap. The whole household is run by the housemaids. There are these 2 nurses or nannies, Flopson and Millers. And, you know, they're kind of always trying to encourage Mrs. Pocket to take the baby, and she cannot hold a baby. Like, it's always like flopping around, and you know, one time it's like its head smashes the table and it gets a concussion. Another time it's like gonna eat needles or something, and another time it's I can't remember, it flops out of her hands. Like, it's just, she's just awful. She's an awful mother. I think that Dickens is not impressed with women who neglect their children because of social pretension, and I think that's what he's getting at here. One other thing in this chapter, we meet Mr. Pocket's other 2 students, Bentley Drummle and Startop. We'll be talking more about them in subsequent lectures. Chapter 5 is also quite a humorous chapter, although this time most of the humor comes from Wemmick, Jagger's clerk. I wanted to point out first, though, at the beginning of the chapter, Wemmick tells Pip about Jagger's plans for Pip in regards to profession. So he says on page 180, he knew more of my intended career than I knew myself, for he referred to as having been told by Mr. Jaggers that I was not designed for any profession, and that I should be well enough educated for my destiny if I could hold my own with the average of young men in prosperous circumstances. What do you make of that? What would you like to have sort of your lot in life as you're not going to have a profession? You don't have to. You're wealthy enough. And maybe some of you are wealthy enough that you really don't need to have a profession. If, in fact, you were in that position where you didn't have to get a career to make money, what would you do? And like, how do people get their identity? And I'm not saying it's right to form your identity from your occupation, but I'm just thinking, what's the implication to not having an occupation? Remember how Biddy had said that, you know, Joe has dignity in being able to do something he's good at. And that's something that, you know, gives him pride. But what about Pip if he has nothing? It's kind of interesting. I don't know that, you know, it's necessarily good. So Wemmick, okay, this guy, he is so funny. I just love him. I just want to just read this one part on page 182 because it's really funny. 182. Wemmick was at his desk lunching and crunching on a dry, hard biscuit, pieces of which he threw from time to time into his slit of a mouth as if he were posting them. And then down the page, when Mr. Wemmick had put all the biscuits in the post and had paid me my money, etc. So Pip is constantly going to talk about Mr. Wemmick's postbox mouth. Like, it's going to come all the time. And it's really funny. He's got this slit of a mouth. So Wemmick tells Pip about Jaggers more, takes him kind of to meet the other clerks who are all very quirky, explains to him about those casts. Remember I'd mentioned that in Jaggers' office there are these two casts, and as it turns out, these were like cast from two different men who had been executed. The one had murdered his master and the other one forged wills. And for whatever reason, Jaggers got their faces cast and he has them up. And Wemmick, while he's explaining this, brings them down and is talking to them. And he's, oh yeah, you're a great soul up there, aren't you? Like, it's just really amusing. Wemmick also acknowledges all the jewelry that he has is all these things that criminals offer him. Presumably they're trying to get on his good side so that he'll admit them to see Jaggers. And Wemmick sees really nothing wrong with doing that because, you know, he has to work in sort of an awful industry working with criminals, and he doesn't make a lot of money, and we're going to learn more about his background. So for him, it seems justified. He tells Pip on page 184, and this is something, besides the post office mouth, there's actually 3 things about Wemmick that crack me up, so that's one of them. But he tells Pip that these are all gifts, etc. Their curiosity, their property. They may not be worth much, but after all, they're property and portable. It don't signify to you with your brilliant lookout. But as to myself, so he's saying, for you, you have great expectations. You're not so concerned about how you're going to get money, but, you know, I am. So for me, my guiding star always is get hold of portable property. Interesting philosophy. So is it just things that, like, he values possessions that he can carry around? Is it because he doesn't want to be trapped by stuff? Is it just because it's easy to trade? And he's going to reference all the time, portable property, portable property. We're going to hear about this all the time. The other thing is, at the end of the chapter, Pip visits the courthouse. He sees Jaggers in action. Everyone in the courtroom, including the judge, is terrified of this man's forcefulness. Even the judge. It's quite amusing.